Okay, thank you. I want to introduce myself. My name is Sandra Frericks, and I'll be leading you through our webinar today on getting minds moving and moving it outdoors. We're going to be talking about great opportunities to get the youth in your program outdoors for some active STEM learning this month or this summer as the weather gets better, hopefully, in different parts of the country. If you haven't already done so, I suggest that you download the items in the resource pod at the top of the page. We're going to be using the What Lives Under That Dead Tree activity later in the webinar. You don't have to have it in front of you to do it. It'll be up on the screen, but I thought it might be easier if you could have it in front of you. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available for you in a few days if you want to share it with other colleagues or with the after-school staff that you work with. Thank you once again for joining us. I'm going to stop the video now so that we don't use up quite so much bandwidth, but it's nice to see everyone. Or it's nice for you to see me at least, and I can see all your names. Wonderful. Okay. So our topic today is active STEM learning. And I wanted to start out just talking a little bit about what that skill is and what it looks like in practice. And then we're going to talk about taking it outdoors as a kind of another layer on top of the skill itself. Active learning is our skill of the month for April. And it's one that I think is a little bit difficult to wrap your head around. It's hard to describe exactly what active learning means. My favorite quote for this skill is, "The one who does the work does the learning." And I have to admit, as I was preparing for the webinar today, I searched a little bit to try to find out who really said that quote for the same time. And I've seen a lot of people who have used it in their blogs and then they're talking about active learning, but I'm not sure exactly where the quote comes from. So if you know where that quote comes from, I'd love to learn that from you today. But what it's telling us is that when the learners do the work, the thinking, the planning, and the figuring things out, they learn more from it. And when we do the work for them, we learn from that experience, but we rob them of the opportunity for them to learn that content. So not only is active learning about preparing young people as learners to do the thinking and the learning themselves, it's also about training ourselves to avoid giving them answers or making a problem easier so that it can get done on time. Because as we do that, we take away the opportunity for them to really understand what it is we want them to experience and learn. So some strategies that you can have your staff use for active STEM learning are helping learners make meaning for themselves to create their own explanations and sense of what is happening, to involve them in authentic science research, inquiry, or problem solving. This might be through problem-based learning or inquiry, but it might also be through citizen science projects where they're really involved in the process of doing science. And the other thing we can use is to encourage a lot of discussions that focus on collaboration and the exchange of ideas to help them practice that skill of working together, sharing their ideas, and listening to other people's ideas. And a strategy for learners that aren't auditory learners is to give them opportunities to write or draw their ideas, to use those opportunities to solidify their understanding or to help them generate new and original ideas as they're thinking and writing or drawing about a concept. So again, the crux of active learners is to let the learners be the one who are solving problems and figuring things out. And so then to train ourselves to not do that work for them. It might make things smoother, it might make things go faster, but it doesn't give them the opportunity to learn and to really solidify that understanding. So that's what we're talking about in active learning. It's both about what we're doing as facilitators and what the children are doing as learners. The second part of our theme for this webinar is to take that active learning outdoors. So now I want to think a little bit about why we want the children to go outdoors. I think you probably know from experience that for most children living in the U.S. today, their time outdoors is limited. But research tells us there are important benefits for children that spend time outdoors. And we'll talk about the different ways that it benefits them. First, there are health benefits from being outdoors. It increases their level of activity, reduces stress, helps children develop large motor skills, and it strengthens their immune system. So just spending time outdoors every day or a significant chunk of time during the week has health benefits for children. Emotionally, psychologically, as well as physically, helps them be healthy. The second area where it benefits them is in their social and emotional development. The social and emotional benefits of outdoor time include developing problem-solving skills, engaging in creative play, and encouraging self-management and improving leadership skills. So as children play outdoors, we're really thinking about playtime here or open exploration time, which can be science learning time as well. We're encouraging them to really develop those emotional, social-emotional leadership, self-management, and problem-solving skills that are important to their success as adults. And finally, there are also cognitive benefits for children in being outdoors. Cognitive benefits of outdoor time include increased time on task. Research shows there's increased recall of instruction that children receive after outdoor time. So it really helps them be more focused and more open to learning after they've been outdoors. And outdoor time provides opportunities for them to experience STEM in a real-world context and build a deeper understanding of STEM concepts. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today, is really about how we can use the outdoors to provide STEM learning experiences and at the same time provide these social, emotional, health, and cognitive benefits to use by getting them outdoors and encouraging exploration and creativity in their outdoor time. Now we're going to be watching a video in just a moment of a group of children who are going outdoors. You can see a little bit of a teaser here of what that video is about. But I'd like to have you share some ideas in the chat box. What do you do with outdoor time? Is this something that you're already using in your program? And how are you using then your outdoor time? It looks like we still have people talking, but I am going to try to keep us moving so that we don't run out of time. I see a range of ideas about using outdoor time, a chance to unwind and relax, that stress reducer that we talked about as one of the health benefits, as well as providing a new environment for learning and having specific learning experiences planned for that outdoor time. So keep sharing those ideas in the chat box. One of the benefits we know from these webinars is the chance to learn from one another what's working in your program. So it's always helpful for people to know what works for you in taking children outdoors. In the video we're going to watch from the Click to Science website, there's a group of youth in a summer STEM camp program who are exploring their local environment, and there's actually an activity you can download from the website, Exploring Your Habitat, that is based on this video. But what I want you to watch for as you're looking at the video is what are the strategies you see staff using to promote engagement, and what learning experiences do you think the children feel they have ownership of in the outdoor STEM activity they're doing. So what is the staff doing to encourage engagement, and what are the activities that you think the students feel they have ownership of? And if you can even explain why it is that you feel like they have ownership, that would be great. Let me open up the video pod here for you to watch. And please do let me know in the chat box if you are hearing the audio. Sometimes there's some problems with this. I will say I'll put the link in the chat box too, because sometimes we have trouble if you don't have a good internet connection, that the video may be hard to watch.
So this spring that we're going to go in actually feeds all of this water that you're seeing back behind us. So the entire wetlands comes from this underground spring down here.
Effective strategies to help youth embrace active STEM learning include allowing youth to get actively involved with the activity, to get messy. In this video, Frontline staff use a local spring to allow youth to engage with their environment. Frontline staff use questions and comments from youth to guide their learning. Watch as they provide youth hands-on opportunities to explore.
Does anybody know where the water comes from in a spring?
Underground.
Underground, very good. So a good way to think of it is that spring water springs up out of the ground. Now a cool thing about a spring, does anybody know what temperature it usually stays at? Any guesses?
50 degrees.
50 degrees, very good. So I actually have some thermometers. We're going to be testing the water temperature out in the spring. We're also going to be looking for living things. All of these things are different animals that we could find in the water, but it has some different areas. Now these animals that are right in the middle, these animals are the ones that you're going to find in the spring because the water is not moving. Do you think we're going to find animals like this in moving water? No. So where do you think we might find in moving water? What do you think? Some fish. So we're going to be looking at animals that might live under rocks because they need something to hold on to as the water's going down. We might find some frog eggs, some fish eggs. To check the temperature, my friends with thermometers, check and see if it's really 50. 60? It's a little off. Do you see the living animals?
Oh yeah, is that a millipede or something?
Kind of. They're water bugs. So millipedes don't really live under the water. Let's look at our rock and see what we can find. So look really closely. Look at your rock too. Look really closely. You see where it kind of looks like jelly right here? Kind of like hair gel? Yeah. That's kind of like eggs. So we found some eggs in here. They might be frog eggs. It could be fish eggs. But they're attached to the rocks. Ooh. You see how these guys are kind of attached to the rock? They can't really float away. So these are what you're going to find mostly over here in this part of the spring.
So what did you notice in the video? Did you feel like there were parts of this activity that the children had ownership of? Some good comments about the engagement and the sense of discovery as children were exploring in the water. One of the things I always think about as I'm watching these videos, when I'm not in the moment, I have a chance to think about what else could have happened in that moment. And in this video, one of the things that I wish is that there have been a little bit more questions, like when the children noticed the water was 60 degrees, that should give them a chance to think, why might that be? It could have just been that the thermometers were off, or maybe the sun shining on the water was warming the temperature. I think it was an opportunity to give them a little bit more ownership that just got missed in the haste of the moment when you've got a lot of different children talking to you all at the same time. So those are the sort of things that we want to look for and try to take advantage of in outdoor learning experiences. Here's some other ideas of what you can do with your outdoor time. And some of these are things that we already talked about as you were sharing your ideas, like providing unstructured time for children to play and explore. This picture here is from the Princess Diana Memorial Playground, and it's one of my favorite play areas. When my son was younger, we lived in London for a few years, and he really enjoyed playing here. Not so much on that really cool ship in the background. He would go on the ship a little bit, but what he really liked was playing in the water. And they have this kind of stream running through the sandbox. It's a planned water feature, but it looks like a natural outdoor space, and he loved engaging like the girls are in this video with moving the rocks around and digging in the sand and playing in the sand and the water. And so that time for just unstructured time to play and explore that environment was something that really engaged him as a young learner. And it's engaging even to older students up through middle school and maybe even into high school. I guess I haven't tried it with high school age youth. But time to explore their natural environment is something that children really enjoy. We also suggest that you listen to the questions that students are asking when they're in that environment and help them to investigate those areas that they're interested in. In the video, maybe trying to figure out more about the eggs that were attached to the bottom of some of the rocks that they found, or why that temperature was warmer than what they had expected it to be in the spring. Another option is to invite in some local experts that can help make connections to their own environment in the community or in the natural environment where you're taking them to explore. Those local real-world contexts are very engaging to young people. Another fun thing to do is provide opportunities for them to engineer the outdoors, to use resources in the environment to construct their own roadways, waterways, dams, sandcastles, or forts. All of those things are really engaging and help youth learn from their natural environment and relax and get those other health benefits as well. If you don't have a resource like this great water feature they had at the park, you might need to bring in your own natural resources. Maybe working with a local gardening contractor to bring in some dirt that the children can dig around in, or create your own water feature outdoors for a short time to give them the chance to explore that in their natural environment. All of those are ways that you can make use of outdoor time to make it beneficial in the social and emotional ways, as well as STEM learning experiences for youth. We also want to encourage you to explore all the seasons in your area. Living on the prairie, as I do, I'm lucky enough that we do have 4 distinct seasons, and these are all pictures from here in Nebraska about what the seasons look like for us. And there are lots of opportunities to enjoy the outdoors year-round. But here are some tips, again, for preparing to do outdoor STEM learning, whatever season it is that you're in. First, of course, you need to consider the weather and prepare for that by providing shade if it's in the summertime, or shelter perhaps in the winter so they can get out of the wind. Water is something they need year-round, and whatever else is really required by that season to help them be comfortable outdoors. And make sure everyone's dressed appropriately for the weather and the space you're going to be in. May need to wear long pants depending on where you're going, even in the summertime. And include things like sunscreen and bug spray if that's appropriate, raincoats or mittens depending on the time of the year, so that they're prepared for the weather that you're going to have. And then the next step is to choose the right time of day to take children outdoors. So when you're going outdoors in the summertime or when it's warm, you want to plan for those morning outdoor experiences to be in the morning when the weather's as cool as it's going to be. But in cold weather, you might want to plan your outdoor experiences to be later in the day when the sun is at its peak so that it's as warm and comfortable as it's going to be. And of course, watch your weather forecast so that you can avoid rain showers, or maybe you're trying to get outdoors during a rain shower, so you want to watch that local weather to catch that opportunity to be outdoors in the rain. And of course, if there's severe weather, plan an indoor activity to do so that you're not at risk of being caught out in severe weather. It is very important, though, not to think that outdoor experiences can only happen in warm weather. You may have to plan your opportunities to be shorter, maybe do some of the planning and learning indoors, take a short time to go outdoors, collect some data or do some observations in cold weather, and then come back in. But there's no reason to avoid any particular season of the year. You just need to be prepared for it. And now we have some STEM strategies that you can use when you're outdoors to help children learn from that outdoor environment and make it an active learning experience for them. So we've talked about why to go outdoors and how to prepare, but this is really focusing now on how do you make the STEM learning happen when you're doing those outdoor activities. So first, it's always going to be most successful if you plan the activities to start or build on the questions students have about their own environment. Those student-directed questions are more likely to engage them in active learning and keep them focused and interested in what you're trying to get them to learn outdoors. So starting with their own questions is an important place to begin. And you may need to spend some time learning what their questions are about your environment that you're going to take them to. Maybe give them a little bit of information about it so they can start wondering about what that space would be like. Next, you need to be prepared to help the learners use appropriate STEM tools in their investigations. Some of these are things that they can use pretty easily on their own, things like magnifying glasses, thermometers, water scopes, or measuring tape are pretty easy to use. But other tools you might want to have them do, like water quality testing or GPS, you might need to do a little training on to help them know how to use that tool before they get outdoors. Binoculars and science journals are other great tools to use to help them focus on observing what's happening around them and taking note of it and remembering what it is that they've observed in that outdoor environment. If you don't have the tools that you need, look for partners in your community that might be able to help. Local natural resource districts or local extension offices might be places where you could borrow those tools. Maybe even high school biology teachers would have some of those tools that you want to use in the outdoor environment. Finally, if you don't have a natural space that you can explore that's easily accessible to you, you may have to plan a field trip to a local wetlands, prairie, or wooded area. Or, as I mentioned earlier, you might be able to work with local yard care companies to bring in some natural resources that children can explore and play in, such as dirt, cut wood, or grass clippings that they can investigate and do some experiments on. And if you're looking for specific ideas, if you have to bring in your own resources, just get in touch with me. Use the Click to Science email at the end of the webinar if you're looking for more suggestions, and I can share some ideas with you. The next activity we're going to do right now is one that you can use as an outdoor education activity that we can do here in the webinar without even having to go outdoors. So this is an activity that I've adapted, I should say, from the TREE Toolkit for Environmental Education Week. And I'll share links to those resources with you at the end of the webinar. But since we're all stuck here in front of our computers and we can't go outside, what I want you to do is think about the trees that you see every day. There's probably some trees that you experience as you're in your day-to-day life, as you're coming to work or traveling around your city. Think about what tree you like the best. Just pick one tree that's your favorite. And then describe in the chat box your favorite tree. Tell us about your tree. What color is it? What shape is it? Are there animals that live near your tree? Does it change throughout the year or throughout the day? Tell us how your tree changes over time. Take just a minute to share in the chat box and tell us a little bit about your favorite tree. Thanks for sharing some ideas about your favorite trees. For those of you who did it, if you didn't get a chance to type in the chat box, I encourage you to continue to do that as I'm talking about some of the observations that I have of this activity. Think about the STEM skills that you used as you told us about your favorite tree. I saw evidence of some careful observations as people talked about how the trees changed over time or in different seasons of the year. There were some explanations about those changes, about how it grows or why the tree grows the way it does. Some of you were communicating like a scientist about your tree. Some of you were communicating like a poet about your tree. You shared how the tree made you feel, how it helps you bring back the memory of your dad, or thinking about new life that comes from the trees in the spring. The symmetry in some ways is kind of poetic and kind of scientific as well. Some of you talked about how trees fit in the ecosystem, how they're connected to other things in their environment, the squirrels, the birds, the children that are part of their environment. So this is a fun activity to encourage a different way of thinking, that we don't have to be outdoors to think about the outdoor environment, but we can bring those outdoor experiences indoors as well. So it's one that I encourage you, if you're doing some professional development with your staff, it's easily adapted to something you can do with staff to help them make some of those personal connections to what we're talking about here about outdoor education and active learning. I'm from Nebraska, and in Nebraska, Arbor Day is really important. John Sterling Morton from Nebraska is part of the Arbor Day movement. And so you'll notice as we go through the rest of the webinar today that this tree theme is going to kind of continue on through the activities that we're talking about today. It's not the only way to explore the environment, but people do have a lot of connections to the trees that are in their environment. A lot of us talked about ancient trees, or trees that have grown and changed over our own lifetime. Both of these are important as people make connections to their local environment. So now I want to focus on the activity that you can download from the resources pod, What Lives Under That Dead Tree. This is an example of a STEM activity. This one comes from the Book of Stuff put out by the Forest Service, and you can download the whole resource there. But this is another tree activity for us to think about, and we're going to use the Click to Science PD resource, How Do I Develop an Activity? And that's one that you can download in the resources pod. It's a 35-minute training that you can incorporate into a staff meeting or part of a short professional development experience. We're not going to spend 35 minutes on it. I don't want you to panic about the time in our webinar. But we're going to spend a few minutes thinking about how we can adapt a STEM activity that is designed to take youth outdoors, and we can put more active learning into that activity. And that's what the How Do I Develop an Activity resource helps you do with your own staff, is how to bring more active learning into an activity. Using this resource doesn't take a lot of expertise on your part as the trainer, because we're modeling just what we've been talking about in terms of active learning with youth, that we want the staff in your professional development workshop to be the ones who are doing the work of figuring out what to do with this activity. You don't have to be prepared to do that for them, because we want them to learn from solving this problem on their own. So as I said, I was preparing for this webinar and I found this great book of stuff, which was about 10 activities from the Forest Service, and they described it as a bunch of fun activities that will help you learn about nature and the environment. Pretty good description, but the activities are pretty brief, not very well developed. So we're going to think about how we can take this activity, and when I saw the title, What Lives Under That Dead Tree, I was sure it had potential to be an active learning experience. So read through the activity here on the screen, or if you've downloaded it from the resource pod, you can pull it up on your screen or print it out. And then share some ideas in the chat box about what you would do to adapt this activity, what changes you could make so that the learners are doing more thinking, more problem solving, investigating, and learning as they're doing this activity. I'll mute my microphone and give you a little bit of time to review the activity and share some ideas that you have to increase that level of active STEM learning. Thanks for sharing your ideas in the chat pod. Some themes that I see emerging from the ideas that were shared is thinking about how we're going to prepare children for the activity. Not all of our children have the same experiences prior to coming to our program, and it may be that very few or none of them have really had much experience with dead trees or decomposition. So it might help to give them a little bit of experience with that idea before they get out there looking for it. And there were some ideas in the chat pod about how to give them some background experiences so that they understand what it is, what this idea of decomposition is and how it works, so that they're better prepared when they get out there to do their observations and know what they're looking for. There are also a lot of ideas about how you follow up this experience. What might the next experience be that builds on this, whether that's an inquiry going into more depth on some of the animals or living things that they found as they were investigating this tree, or how can they apply what they've learned in another activity. Liliana suggested creating their own dead forests where they can learn and apply what they've learned, and also helping them understand what the role is of decomposition and how it contributes to that overall ecosystem. So lots of good ideas about how we're going to prepare and follow up with the activity. Some other things to think about is what are those STEM tools that would be appropriate for them to use. Taking some soil samples is a good idea of how they can engage in that process that scientists do and understand maybe what is happening to the soil around where the tree is decomposing as compared to other areas nearby. I also suggested using digital cameras. I find that it really engages children, that they're more likely to really look closely and make observations through a camera lens than they are making drawings or sketches. So that's one of my ideas about how to engage them in using some STEM tools. We also need to think about how much time to spend on this activity. Maybe it's something that happens over the course of time. Maybe you come and visit it a few different times to look for changes. But, you know, what are you going to do with someone who's not really engaged? Does that need to keep your time shorter or longer, different ideas about that. And the important thing here in this activity as a professional development experience isn't that we necessarily come to the right answer about how to adapt this activity, because there's lots of different directions we could go with the activity. There isn't simply one right answer. But what we want to do is engage our staff in the process of thinking about and problem solving this skill of adapting an activity. What are the questions that they want to ask about the activity itself to really get to a deeper level of active learning? And that's the point of this PD experience, that you can download. How do I develop an activity? And it's really not that there's a particular right answer, but we want to engage staff in the process so they can think about how to use that as they're planning their own programming. Since it is April, and April is a fantastic time to celebrate the outdoors, I don't want to pass up the opportunity to talk with you about the special events this month. April 22nd is Earth Day. And that's followed, the next week is National Park Week. If you are located near any of our national parks, there's free admission to national parks the weekend before and after National Park Week, so that's worth looking into. And Arbor Day in many states is April 28th. So lots of things to celebrate in April about going outdoors and learning about your environment. Here's some ideas that I took from the Earth Day page about how to celebrate Earth Day in April or all year long. One of my favorites is the idea of creating a tribute to that favorite tree. It's a chance to really have a STEAM learning experience. They can think about poems, writing about the tree, photographs of the tree, a skit or a play about the tree, music about the tree, all kinds of tributes that they could make to a favorite tree. In Nebraska here, we have the emerald ash borer coming on big this year, and it's a time to think about the trees that we're going to be losing to that intruder into our state. So there's lots of ideas about recognizing and remembering trees in the neighborhood. Also, service that you can do in your community, picking up trash, planting a garden, planting a tree, all of these things that can engage the students in helping their environment around them, bringing in experts to help them understand more about their local environment, all different ways to get them outdoors and learning different things. Let me pull up a new pod for you. So down at the bottom of the page now, there's a pod for web links to additional resources. And we want to encourage you to think about what you can do in your program. So all of these links down there can help you find more resources about getting students outdoors. There's a blog on the Click to Science site, as well as the link to the Earth Day site, to Environmental Education Week, Arbor Day. All of these sources have great resources that you can use to help really use the theme here in April. Lillian has a good question about how much time do you need for a recycling drive. There's a lot of flexibility. You could plan something for a month or a week, or you could even just have children kind of like a cleanup, look for recyclables around the school that they can clean up. I think about 4 weeks is a great length for a recycling drive because it gives you the opportunity to get families engaged as well as the students. But if you go to the Earth Day resources link below, it'll have more information for you about what logistics to think about if you do want to do a recycling drive. They've got some great resources there that can help you plan that. We do want to remind you that the resources on click2sciencepd.org are designed especially to support out-of-school programs and improve overall program quality, staff satisfaction, and retention, and to really increase the impact that staff have on youth by providing these resources for staff development to build our skills as facilitators of learning and after school, and to help provide higher quality STEM experiences for youth. We want to encourage you to use these resources, and that's why I really do suggest that you download How Do I Develop an Activity, and think about how you could do that with the staff or volunteers in your program to help them think about how to take an activity, perhaps one that they're going to be teaching, and adapt active learning to give youth more opportunities to solve problems and think through dilemmas for themselves. Or when this recorded webinar is up in a few days, you can go through the webinar experience that we just had and do it with your staff. We want to encourage you to use these resources in a way that works for you. As we're finishing up, if you have any more questions about embracing active STEM learning or getting youth outdoors, I encourage you to include those in the chat box now. If you want more ideas about providing professional development for your staff, we do want you to visit us at click2sciencepd.org and look for those resources that you can use to help staff up their game with the youth in your program. And again, that email, click2sciencepd@unl.edu, is a great way to send me a question. If there's something we've talked about in the chat box here that you'd like more information about, just drop me an email. Our next webinar on Wednesday, May 10th is Creating a Making and Tinkering Summer. And we're going to be thinking about making and tinkering in our webinars all through this summer. If you're excited about that or you'd like to know more about how that fits into an after-school setting, please plan on joining us on May 10th. In the meantime, you can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook or Pinterest to get lots of ideas about how to make STEM click. And if you are not already registered on the Click2Science website, sign up now so that you get our emails and our updates about what's coming up. That's what I have to share with you today. Thank you for joining us. And I'll leave these pods up if you want to check out some of these additional resources as we're wrapping up. If you would like more research on the benefits of outdoor playtime and what works in outdoor learning, the last two links in the web links pod are on some additional resources on those topics. Thank you so much.